You think you are reacting to what's happening, but most of the time you are reacting to what your mind decided it means. And that meaning isn't always true. You move through life assuming you are seeing things clearly, that what you feel makes sense, that what you think is accurate. But here's the problem. You're not actually seeing a reality. You're seeing an interpretation. Every moment, your mind is filling in the gaps, assigning meaning, predicting intent. And then it treats that interpretation as fact. For example, someone doesn't reply to your message. That's the only thing that actually happened. But your mind says, they are ignoring me. Something's wrong. I did something. And suddenly you feel anxious, rejected, or distant. But none of that came from reality. It came from interpretation. This is where it gets deeper. Your mind doesn't just interpret reality, it projects onto it. What you feel inside, fear, insecurity, doubt, gets pushed outwards, and then see it as if it's coming from another person. For example, you walk into a group and people go quiet. Immediately, your mind says, they were talking about me. But what actually happened? People went quiet. That's it. Everything else, the tension, the discomfort, the feeling of being judged, came from inside and got projected outward. The reason this is so powerful is because your mind doesn't question its own interpretations. It creates a story and then believes it. And once that happens, your body reacts, your emotions follow, your behavior changes, as if the story were reality. For example, someone you care about seems distant, and your mind instantly builds meaning they are pulling away. An anxious person feels panic. An avoidant person shuts down. A disorganized person feels torn. And a secure person pauses. Same situation, different internal story, different emotional world. Most of the conflict in your life is not coming from what's happening. It's coming from what you believe it means. Because when you believe your interpretation is true, you react, you defend, you assume. And that creates distance even when none was there. For example, someone gives you a short feedback. Your mind says, they are criticizing me. Now you feel attacked. Maybe you defend yourself. Maybe you shut down. But what actually happened? Words were said. The conflict came from the meaning. This is where everything changes. When you start realizing you don't actually know what things mean. And instead of reacting automatically, you pause. You begin to ask, what am I assuming right now? Is this a fact or interpretation? Could there be another explanation? And in that moment, you create space. For example, someone's tone feels off. Instead of thinking they are upset with me, you pause and think, maybe they are tired. Maybe it's not about me. And instantly, the emotional reaction softens. Nothing outside changed, but your experience did. When you start seeing this clearly, you stop reacting so quickly. You stop taking everything personally, assuming the worst, believing every thought, and you start noticing something powerful. Most of what you thought was happening was never actually happening. It was your mind trying to make sense of uncertainty. So the next time something triggers you, pause and remember, you are not just reacting to what's happening. You're reacting to what your mind believes it means. And that meaning is not always the true. If this clicked for you, comment clarity below. And I'll keep breaking down these patterns so you can start seeing things as they are, not just as they appear.